I'm uncomfortable predicting a win total for the 2026 Badger football team, and I have Nick Osen here to discuss this with on the Scary Alvarez podcast. All right, welcome aboard. Little different intro there. Yeah, pretty exciting. This is with my 1986 tech skills. This is good stuff. But hey, Nick, I always love having you on. Welcome aboard, and let's have some fun tonight.
Scary, absolutely, my friend. It's been a little while, man. Thank you so much for having me back. Obviously, some big things to get into, a little bit of projections. I've been looking forward to this, man.
Good, and we'll talk about the win projections and get into that, and then I'm going to talk to Nick about some recruiting stuff. We're going to see how the temperature of that is. Obviously, if you've been watching this show, I'm feeling pretty good about the 27 class. I think Nick feels pretty good about it too. But boy, things are just getting started here as we're starting to get into summer visits and that sort of thing. So I will definitely give you the baton on that one. But let's go back to my initial teaser. Um, you know, so much can happen in between spring camp and fall camp, and then so much can happen in between fall camp and the actual games. But unlike past years, and this isn't some great hill I'm dying on where people are like, wow, Scary, that's amazing you're doing that. But this is just kind of where I am. I've been I'm not saying confident in my predictions in past years, but confident making predictions. This is going to be a 9-win kind of year. This is going to be a 7-win kind of year. And what I've learned over the last 3-4 years is that, for me at least, and this is no diss on anyone who makes predictions, that's totally fine, but this is just Scary doing scary stuff. Right now, heading towards June, still some time before fall camp starts. I don't have a read on this team. I mean, I have some, as I've talked about in previous podcasts, some good feelings about some of the way that certain positions have loaded up in the portal and in the recruiting class. But it's been too many, like I'm a beaten dog. I just don't know if this team is going to be good or not. You don't have to give me a win total, but how does that wash over you, Nick? I mean, as we're sitting here in late May, how are you feeling about this squad heading into the summer months and then fall camp come right in the heels of that?
Yeah, Scary. I appreciate the candor and the honesty, to be quite frank with you, because it's funny, these lines come out from Vegas, and a lot of times they know things, sometimes they don't, but it's just so hard to get a pulse on not just Wisconsin, but really any team at this point in the season or the year, really, just because obviously you're going against yourself, and there's a lot of kind of unproven guys. And so with Wisconsin specifically, look, here's where I'm at, my friend. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to pick them to do. I'll say this, I'll keep it a little vague, but certainly a bowl team, some of those projections. And you and I'll do probably 2-3 more shows before things really get going, and I'll give specific numbers. But where I think you can find some comfort or confidence is a few areas. I think first and foremost, and I'm not saying that Colton Joseph was perfect throughout all of spring. I think he would tell you himself there was some adjusting early. He might still adjust at times in the Big Ten season. That's going to happen. But I think talent-wise, you've got probably the highest ceiling QB that you've seen with Luke Fickell and Madison. I think people love hearing this. Run blocking, that has already gotten better and really should only continue to, as kind of some of the little bit injured offensive linemen come back in the fall. Guys continue to go against themselves. So that first couple weeks really go hard with each other. And then finally, I'm not ready. I haven't said it anywhere. I haven't said best yet, but there's probably the most talented secondary, Scary, that we've seen so far in Madison. And that's a lot of credit to some of the transfers they brought in, as well as development within the program from guys like Jameer Scott, Kairos Gaines, Matt Young with another year. So those are kind of 3 ways where I'm answering your question in a way. Yeah, it's maybe not, hey, Nick is saying they're going 10-2 right now, but I do think it's going to be a better football team than we've generally seen the last couple seasons.
Well, I love hearing that, and to be upfront with where I am, I agree with you there. It's not, and I just did a show with Connor Whalen last week. He's a real smart kid, does his homework.
I like Connor as well. He knows that. That's a great dude coming up.
he does his like I said, he does his homework. He literally does his homework. So I think he's a student still, but he does his homework for podcasts. But he came in and we talked about it, and there were definitely areas, some of the ones you just mentioned, that I am tangibly confident in, optimistic. I even like, that's secondary. And you always have to see where it shakes out, how the pieces fit together. But I don't think there's any question the talent in the room, and not just the talent at one. Like I got a bunch of slot guys, I got a bunch of boundary guys. The talent as it is spread out across the field, and that's in that cornerback room, especially the safety room. I didn't get too far into, but I agree. Obviously, you got Burks coming in there, and there's some good stuff there. But that three deep or the projected three deep in the cornerback room, I feel really, really good about. Now I just got to see how it blends, see how it mixes.
Yeah, well, and Scary, you're exactly right. I mean, I actually, smile thinking about it too because there's just such an influx of talent. I think that Javen Robinson is certainly expected to be a number one with the outside guys, and then you've got Bryce West, who I think is generally going to be your slot corner. Raphael Dunn likely behind him. But that other corner spot, I know guys have to be able to play field and boundary at times, but I believe you're truly like there's a chance between Jameer Scott, Eric Fletcher, Kai Bates. They all performed well enough, at least from what I saw in the spring, to get reps, to get game reps, reps that matter. And I think they will at times. I'm just curious to see who Steeples does maybe give that other starting nod to outside. I think that I had Jameer Scott as the most consistent out of that group, certainly standing out the most. But with Fletcher, you get some great game experience. Kai Bates brings quite the ceiling with his kind of blend of size and speed. So it's going to be awesome, man, to be honest, as long as these guys can stay healthy and continue to grow and develop. Credit to them, but also Steeples, Haynes, Cooper, Chris Worley, and really that kind of whole back of the defense. Because even though there's some strong competition, Scary, one thing that I have loved, that I've seen, and that I've written a good amount about is these guys are actually best friends. Whether we're talking about the corners that I mentioned or like Cairo with those other 2025s and Carson Van Dinter now in there. A lot of support for each other as well.
I love hearing that last part, especially because when you had so many dudes leave the program in one position group as they have with the cornerback since 23, hearing there's cohesion and guys who like and again, I'm not even getting into why the reasoning behind why those things happen, but it's just objectively right now in 2026, it's so nice to hear this cohesion there. But just to tie this back to my initial theme of not wanting to make any predictions, I agree with you. I think this group looks great, and maybe it's just conditioning in the sense of the psychological kind of conditioning on my end, not the football kind of conditioning for the players. Is that I've had what I deem similar confidences about various groups. We lost. Oh, yeah, you got like a Northwestern Wildcat symbol there. The end. That's the old school Northwestern influence. But it's that I've just lost my enthusiasm for making big projections because I've seen high expectations before across a number of different groups where it just hasn't come through. And you know what? I'm not saying because it happened before it's going to happen again. It probably won't. I think that cornerback group, I would be shocked if that wasn't a sizable improvement from past years. Same with the line, same with the backfield and the offense this year, same with the quarterback. So I have all these moments, but just I cannot get myself to the point where I'm going to say, and by God, that's an 8-win team. Or that's, as you're seeing on the boards, man, you see this on the boards yourself and on social media. This is an 8-win team. This is a 9-win team. I've seen this is a 10-win team. Maybe, Nick. I don't know. But you still have to see it on the field. You still have to stay healthy. You still have to have the confusion. And well, this is certainly at the high end, especially a much easier schedule. I went back and went through some of these games, and I called them the 5 most important games of the year. And these are still hard games. USC at Penn State, Notre Dame at a neutral, Minnesota, which is a team you have not beaten in 3 years. Iowa, a team that has absolutely bludgeoned and owned you, and then you got a bunch of other 50-50 coin flip games. So this could
be even the game at UCLA is going to be a little bit different than UCLA the last couple of years because I do think they made a heck of a hire. So I'm jumping in a little bit, but I agree, man. I
Yeah.
figure that the ceiling is I think kind of similar throughout a lot of maybe some of the media friends and podcasters and fan bases. Like I think that is kind of pretty consistent, but I think the floor is what you really don't necessarily know yet. I think we get the best grasp of it that we can possibly, of course, and we're so grateful to get to these practices. I think we see a little bit more of it in August when they are, of course, going a little bit harder, a little bit deeper into the year now, familiarity with offense, teammates, chemistry. And then obviously, hey, you're not going to be going way too hard during game week and such because you need to be healthy and prepared and walkthroughs and things of that nature. So I agree. There are a few games. I mean, I feel like you can say, hey, that's a win or that should be a win. I think there are several of those in the month of November. Obviously, kind of a couple of the bye type games as well in the non-con. But I would tend to agree. Kind of that meat and potatoes, really in the middle of the schedule, will really just kind of show what this football team is about. I'm sure you're with me because I don't think you do too much, my friend, in terms of shock value and things like that. Like,
Nope.
I don't love when people say, that Notre Dame game, if they get the doors blown off, that's just going to be kind of what the season looks like. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think they're going to get rocked. I think there's a lot of time until then to see this group improve. And frankly, I think it's going to be a pretty competitive game, especially early in Lambeau prime time. But like Notre Dame is looked at as, I think I've seen a consensus top 5 or 6 team. It's
Yep.
not like it's a true home game, so they're certainly going to have a lot of their fans. One of the top, what would you say, 6 to 8 QBs in the land, and CJ Carr from what we've seen so far. So
Right.
I'm certainly not about shock value in my coverage. That's why I always say there's a middle ground. These people are standouts, room to grow here, things like that. But that's worth noting too. I don't
Yeah,
think.
I appreciate that. And staying grounded is the. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Staying
Yeah,
grounded
no,
is
you're good.
exactly the way to be, and that's part of your appeal, frankly, Nick. I mean, you do have an optimistic tinge, but it is fortified with facts and
Mhm.
observations, which is
I
what I appreciate.
appreciate
And
that.
no,
Yeah,
I don't go for.
anybody that said, and it's funny, if we're great friends with some other great podcasters in our group as well, like Ryan, Rajiv, Justin, and Rajiv said to me a month ago or so. It was like 6 weeks ago, a couple shows ago. He said something like, "Nick, I've noticed even maybe a little bit of trepidation or things like that when you're talking about the QB and the offense." And I said, "Hey, I'm just being consistent, not to overhype, go way too optimistic," which frankly I never have, and I will stick with that throughout my time here. But you're exactly right. Like it's rooted in facts, it's rooted in sources, connections. I do think it's going to be a pretty good football team, but I also think that they can be pretty good and maybe not reach 9 or 10 wins. We'll see. I am optimistic. I think the defense could be potentially elite, but I just want to continue to see more growth and consistency going against that defense in the month of August.
Yeah, that's all fair. And like I said, I mean, after we all observe, I mean, you're going to be observing hands on. I'm probably not going to be in those practice fields, but observe fall camp and get some more feeling about the team under circumstances that are more, you know, geared towards the season than maybe some of the stuff we saw in spring. Hey, maybe I do come out with a prediction. I'm just telling you, again, it's not for shock value, but I just have a wide enough view of how things could go that for right now, as we're sitting in late May, I'm just not ready to say, man, this is the one. This is the year.
Yeah,
This is the fickle breakthrough. God, that would be awesome if it was. And no one's going to be rooting
I
for it more
think
than
it
I, except
can
for
be. No, I
yeah.
know. I think it can be scary. Like I will say that. I mean, the roster is in a better spot. Like the talent, some of the depth, but I think just a lot of it is, some of these guys are unproven, and obviously there are a ton of transfers and guys that are new to the program. So it'll be interesting. But like you said, knock on wood, I'm grateful to have a kind of a first person, hands-on view, whether we're talking practices or games, my friend.
Well, it's good to have him. That's part of why we have you on. Besides the fact that we love having him. Okay, let's put the train brake on right now. Switch gears a little bit right to football recruiting. class of 2027. 247 has the Badgers as of right now, number 21 in the country, number 10, the Big Ten. A lot of good momentum in the earlier part of the spring. Landed a ton of, as obviously you know this, a ton of Wisconsin kids, bunch of 4 stars, a bunch of kids who are 3 stars who have, and frankly, in my opinion, every bit as much potential as some of these other guys. And we're feeling really good about things. Let me ask you this. I mean, it's kind of a two-part question. We'll get into more specifics. But are you feeling comfortable with someone who covers them? Do you think there's comfort inside 1440 Monroe that Wisconsin's sitting in 21st place, not 21st place, but number 21 position, number 10, the Big Ten, but with a class that a lot of people are saying is looking real good as we're heading into June here?
I think that there is, really a lot of, I would say, excitement, and that is the right word, frankly. I mean, I'm talking with these recruits all the time. I know you're talking about how the program might feel, people high up in the program.
Yeah.
Look, I think that they've done a really, really damn good job with this class so far. They're not done. I won't even say they're almost done, but like numbers wise, you could say they're like 60, 65%. Like it's not going to be a 30-man class, but it's also not going to be 15. I have said and reported, Scary, I'm comfortable saying this year, it's nothing too crazy. I think it'll be 20 to 22 players. And obviously there are some positions that I'll kind of vaguely get into on here as well that they're certainly looking to hit on these next couple weeks. But man, with the way that they sit right now and just the way they really cleaned up in state, they got a composite 4-star QB. I think they're at like 5 or 6. I think 6 composite 4-stars as a whole. I do think there is a lot of confidence, excitement, but also recognition that, hey, we're doing well, but this class isn't done. The work's not done, and they know what it's going to take, not just to add more staples to said class, but also really make that lasting impact in the fall, like you said, Scary, when the lights come on.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I know your stock and trade is information, and I know you have paid subscribers, so I'm not asking for any freebies here. But if you could pick a couple of positions, some of them seem obvious, defensive back and some corners and receivers. But over the next 2-3 weeks with some of these big visit weekends, and I suspect there'll be some corresponding commitments. What are some areas that Wisconsin fans should be looking for Fickle and his guys to hit big on the next few weeks?
Yeah, well, because you're my guy, Scary, because the other guys I mentioned, we're all good friends. I'll drop a couple names first, and then I'll go position. So Nathan Jones, the linebacker, and wide receiver Steele Harris coming from Montana. Nathan Jones is coming from Arizona. Those are a couple names I'm certainly tracking closely. And just in terms of positions, look, I think you got to say wide receiver. I think that Coach Adi Confessor is in a good spot with several, so it's going to be interesting how things finish up. But they obviously are looking to add there. Cornerback as well, in a really good spot with a few, but obviously got to kind of get them across the finish line. And then, maybe a sneaky position that isn't being talked about as much is that edge spot. I think it probably isn't talked about as much because Isaac Miller's already in, but they're looking to add at least one more guy. And I think that they're in on a couple really good high 3 stars, borderline 4 stars. Those are probably the 3 positions I'm tracking most closely, and I will actually have a story. I think this is going out on Tuesday or so for you, around Tuesday or Wednesday for me on 247 to get a little deeper into that as well.
I'd love to hear it. So, I mean, it's your obviously the early to mid part of the cycle, getting into the early part of the 2026 into last month. I think it was a near consensus from not only fans and podcasting fans like I am, but also professionals that this was some really impressive early work. No question. I mean, you get the Course Lokins and, as you mentioned, Miller and Ryder and just these guys you're loading up and they seem to like each other. And these guys are the biggest advocates. Yeah. I mean, I felt real. I had a podcast with almost all of them on. It was almost
awesome.
Almost the whole group. And they just seem like I don't know them, but they seem like good kids, kind of kids you want in that locker room. And they believe. Them believing after the 3 seasons or 4 seasons or 5 and however far you want to go back in Wisconsin to say it hasn't quite looked like the Badgers. The fact that these kids who grew up loving the Badgers are so excited to not only come here, but to get other kids who are not from Wisconsin to join them on the journey is great objective evidence to me that something special is brewing in this 27 class. But as you just said, and he threw some names out there. I appreciate that. Jones is one of them. There's still work to do to get this across the line in good shape. And you seem to feel pretty confident that Fick and his guys are going to get that done.
Yeah, I do feel, like they'll get a pretty good group of guys in terms of value, potential, skill sets, development, camaraderie, like you mentioned. I think, kind of my call right now, what I've been saying is I think they'll have around 20 or 21 commits really at some point in the summer. So not obviously all happening this summer, but in total. And then you look for, obviously sometimes guys look elsewhere during the season or other teams and programs are looking at Wisconsin. And, then you maybe have space for a couple late flips. But as we know, more of that can happen when you're winning more games and positive vibes, and you're able to maybe flip some late 4 stars, things of that nature. So I'm excited, man. I love it. I've had a nice Memorial Day weekend a little bit, but I'm really excited to, get into some more of this. I'll have, I think, 3 more preview content items coming this week. So definitely follow along.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And, besides coming on here and sharing some of your insight, just, out there in the wilderness, there's a lot of dudes out there flapping their gums about the Badgers and recruiting and stuff. And I really appreciate the fact that you cut through a lot of the BS, and you're very reliable in your coverage and also a good guy. So it's you're always a friend of the show, and it's great having you on. I think we'd probably love to have you on even more. So we'll catch up with you again, I'm sure, this summer in the fall camp, and see where things sit. It's probably going to be sitting even in better position than it is right now with the 27 class. But maybe even then I'll have this is what they call bookending in the business, Nick. I might even have a win total projection by then. We'll see if I feel comfortable. But hey, enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, and thanks for jumping on.
Man, thank you so much, my friend, for having me back. Always look forward to it. Appreciate it, Scary. Obviously, continue to do great work. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.